and such a significant member of the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like I say, it's a little intimidating, but I'm going to give it a shot by the blessings of the devotees. There are different prominent literatures in the Chaitanya Lila pastimes. Of course, we've discussed before which these are. There's the most well-known, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then we have the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, of course, by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Then the Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Chaitanya Mangala by Lochan Das Thakur. Murari Gupta, the physician and close associate of Mahaprabhu in Navadvip, wrote a book called the Chaitanya Charita. Then the second wave of devotees, we have the Bhakti Ratnakar, which is written by Narahari Sakar. And then we have the Gaura Gonadesha Dipika, written by Kavi Karnapur. Gaura Gonadesha Dipika is a very, very, what I consider, essential book in the pastimes of the Lord, because Kavi Karnapur, who's the son of, his original name was Puri, the son of Shivananda Sen, he, on the strength of indications from his father and personal realizations and revelations to him, gives the identity of who each of the personalities in Chaitanya Lila were during their Krishna Lila. So very, very interesting.
Could we pause for just 10 seconds?
Sure, we're going to take a quick pause here for a slight technicality. Just one moment. What's up?
I have to adjust something with the audio really quick.
Oh, okay. No problem.
And we're
This
back.
went off.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And we're back.
All right, we're back. That was just a little break to enhance your taste, those of you that are listening and watching, just to give a little more interest. So, all right, so sound better now? Everybody happy? Good, good. There we go. Mauricio, thank you for keeping us in the loop. We appreciate it. All right. So, Gaura Gonadesha Dipika. Kavi Karnapur explains in there that Haridasa Thakura is the combination of three different personalities. Now, we talked once before, actually a couple of times, we mentioned how the defect of material consciousness is linear thinking. The defect of material consciousness is that we start at a point and we very systematically progress to a secondary point. And everything moves forward in that direction. The interesting thing about the spiritual energy is it's not bound by the same type of conditioning and conditions that the material energy is. So the fact is it's not bound at all. So it's multi-dimensional, multi-directional, multi-layered. You know, it's very, very interesting. So we have situations in the different pastimes of the Lord where one or two of the different individuals can actually manifest into the same form for a particular pastime. So in Gaura Gonadesha Dipika, Kavi Karnapur mentions that there, first of all, Brahma. This is a pastime we will speak about that we're all very familiar with. Lord Brahma, Sri Prahlad, and a young Brahmin boy who was the son of Rishika Muni have all three combined to be the personality Haridasa Thakura. Now, the shortest of these, of course, well, Sri Prahlad, we all know the story of Prahlad, and Prahlad's immense ability to preach to his classmates, and his immense ability to bring completely unlikely personalities to the process of devotional service, all by the strength of his faith in the holy name. Such an easy understanding how he became Haridasa Thakura. Then we have this young boy, Rishika Muni's son. Rishika Muni was a very devoted Brahmin in a different yuga, assisting his father in the worship of the Lord. Very, very systematically working and serving the Lord. And he gave one tulsi leaf to the Lord on the instruction of his father, but he failed to properly cleanse that tulsi leaf beforehand. Now, in previous ages, cleanliness was a heavy, strict, foundational principle of the Brahminical community. I mean, of course it is nowadays too. Brahman means to be always clean. But even the subtleties were very, very much particular. So because he hadn't cleaned the tulsi leaf first, this meant it was unclean. Unclean meant yavana, lecha. So his father cursed him. This is a pretty heavy father. Some of you may have grown up with strict fathers. I don't know if any of them cursed you to take another birth. So his father cursed him, you'll take your next birth as a mlecha because you do not know how to be clean. Interesting. Now, of course, this is all the pastimes of the Lord. But, so in this way, he came to be Haridasa Thakura. Now, my favorite, and what I think is the most exciting and interesting in these stories, deals with Lord Brahma. During Krishna's pastimes, Lord Brahma was observing all the different activities of Krishna in Braj. And he was seeing how all the cowherd boys and all were worshipping this little cowherd boy Krishna. They're all worshipping him and they treat him like he's someone special. You know, I'm actually more qualified than Krishna is. I'll show this Krishna who's really the topmost, who's really in charge. So we know the story. Brahma Vivaha Mohan. How Brahma became illusioned and tried to play a trick on Krishna. So what trick did he play? He took all the cowherd boys and all the calves and hid them in a cave for 1 year. By an illusory arrangement, he captured all the cows, and then the boys went to look for the cows, and he captured all the cowherd boys, and he hid them in a cave, and blocked up that cave. Now, of course, why would he keep them there for 1 year? He didn't actually keep them there for 1 year. He put them in the cave, blocked up the cave, and said, okay, now we'll see what Krishna does. And then he thought, that probably wasn't a very good idea. I mean, after all, Brahma's the head of our sampradaya, and he's the creator of the universe. So he was a very intelligent person. He thought, probably not a very good idea. But just as we were talking about how things are not necessarily lunar outside of our own experience, Brahma's time frame is completely different than ours. Brahma's second is like 1 year to us. So in the time that he captured the boys, put them and hid them, and then said, oh, not a good idea, I should go release them, he observed two things. One, that 1 year had passed in the time of the Earth planet. And when he brought all the cowherd boys and all back, he saw that Krishna's in Vrindavan still enjoying with all the cowherd boys and all the cows. That Krishna had actually manifested new friends and new cows from his own expansion so that the mothers and the mother cows wouldn't be put into any anxiety. It mentions that during that year, the love of the mothers and the cows increased for their boys and their calves tremendously so, because it was actually Krishna. So Brahma saw this, and he became very forgetful, and he prayed to the Lord, my dear Lord, please forgive me. I did not mean to do this. I'm simply a fool. How can I make up for this? So Krishna said to him, he said, in the Kali Yuga, I will appear as the golden avatar in the color of Srimati Radharani, experiencing the mood of Srimati Radharani, and you will come and assist me in these pastimes. So Brahma began to think about this, that the Lord will appear in Mayapur. So he went to Mayapur, to Antardweep, which is the center island in the Navadweep 9 islands, and he began to meditate. How will I serve the Lord and not make a similar offense? I mean, I'm big Brahma and I made such a big offense. Now what if I serve the Lord in this pastime and I make it? So the Lord understood his meditation, and the Lord appeared to him in his form as Gauranga. And he said, my dear Brahma, when I appear in this form as Gauranga, you will appear as my close associate. But you will be born into the family of Muslims so that it will keep you humble. You will take a low birth. You will not be born into an upper-class Brahmin family. But you will assist me in wonderful ways in spreading of the Sankirtan movement. And Gauranga disappeared. Brahma was very, very happy. And then in due course of time, Brahma took his birth. So these are the three different stories, given all from very reliable and authoritative scriptures. Now, this story of Brahma's appearing, this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Navadweep Mahatmya. He tells that pastime there. So sometimes we understand there are multiple ways in which the Lord carries out his activities. This pastime is also confirmed in the Advaita Vilas, which is the pastimes of Advaitacharya. Excuse me. So, now, there's another very important point here that Srila Prabhupada speaks about, and is mentioned in addition in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that a devotee of the Lord is not bound by the external appearance of a physical body. This was the principle that Lord Chaitanya taught of taking the holy name to anyone. Nityananda was particularly good at this, giving the holy name to people of so many different classes and subcastes and so on and so on. So Haridasa Thakura, the topmost of devotees, appeared in the lowest of families, so to speak. But this is to show that the nature of the devotee's material circumstance did not impact his spiritual advancement. Excuse me. So Haridasa Thakura was born in a village of Jaisalmer. And this is in West Bengal. In East Bengal, in what we now call Bangladesh. And when he was born into a Brahmin family, actually. But his parents both died at a very, very young age, and he was adopted. And he was adopted by a Muslim family. And this Muslim family, his name was Habibullah Khan. Habibullah Khan was like the local magistrate, so to speak. So he and his wife adopted this Haridas. And he was brought up very, very nicely in the Muslim tradition. All the different types of principles, and a rather comfortable lifestyle. The father was a magistrate and a local landowner and like that. And so in this way, Advaita Vilas mentions that he did not have any interest in this type of family life, in this type of pleasure. He was really just interested in the holy name. Even from a young age, he had an interest in the holy name. So it mentions that when he was 18 years old, he left home. Now, it's important to point out here, because you've heard me mention a few times previously about the different age comparisons, Now, Haridas took his birth 35 years before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his appearance. Now, Nityananda was 12 years older than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this means, therefore, that he was 23 years before Nityananda that Haridas took his birth. Now, we know at that time Advaitacharya was present, because Advaitacharya was much older also. He was even a little bit older than Jagannath Mishra, who was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father. So, during this time, when Mahaprabhu was in his youthful pastimes in Navadvip, say from about 10 years old to 15 years old, we'll see later in the story, at this point, Haridas comes onto the scene. And so by this time, Haridas is about 50 years old when he first meets Mahaprabhu. So quite elderly. This also gives clarity and validity to the fact that he died so much earlier than any of the other associates, that he left this world, we should say. So just a little bit of a background, item there to kind of, bring that out. So when Haridas was living in the village with Halibullah Khan, as I say, he was not interested in any of the wealth or any of the family activities. He was very renounced, quite self-controlled. And he left home at the age of 18 to go and live in the jungle. And when he went to the jungle, he went out, I think, there's a name for the jungle, but I don't remember it. When he went into the jungle, he established one hut for himself, a little place to live, and he planted a tulsi plant. And every day he would water, he would get up in the morning, take his bath, then he would offer his obeisances to the tulsi plant. He would water the tulsi plant, he would circumambulate the tulsi plant, and then he would chant 300,000 names of the Lord a day. 3 lakhs, as they say. if you do the math and figure this out real quickly, it comes out to 196 rounds a day. 196 rounds. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave us 16 rounds. 16 rounds takes about, well, actually, Prabhupada said if you're very good, you chant 5-minute rounds, it takes an hour and 20 minutes to chant 16 rounds. So if we take into account that Haridasa is probably pretty good at chanting, we're looking at about 22, 23 hours a day of japa. This was Haridasa Thakura's program. Now it mentions that the first 64 rounds, he would chant 64, the first 64 rounds, he would chant quietly in his mind. The second set of 64 rounds, he would chant audibly. And the third set of 64 rounds, he would chant very loudly. And then he would travel around to different places, and he would go madhukari, as it says. He would take a little prasadam from here or there. You know, people would actually... No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm jumping ahead in the story. He would actually take what... People came to know that there's this saintly young boy here chanting the holy name, so they would bring all kinds of prasadam and, you know, fruits and things like that, offerings. And he would take a little something, and then he would throw the rest out to the children. He would throw all the fruits and bananas and, you know, coconuts and things like that to the children for them to take home with them as prasad. So in this way, he became very, very much respected. He was of spotless character, exceptional in his behavior, and strict as the lines in a rock in his sadhana. So during this time, in this area where he was, there was one atheist, how shall we say, Vaishnava hater. And his name was Ramchandra Khan. Ramchandra Khan was a big landowner and, of course, a Muslim. Very, very big king, landowner, Muslim, very, very jealous and envious of the Vaishnavas. Could not stand that they were getting any praise or satisfaction. So, what to speak of, here's Haridasa Thakura. And Haridasa Thakura is getting all kinds of glorification and praise and respect by all the local people. So Ramchandra Khan could not stand this. So he decided, I will defame this Haridasa. So he sent a notice out for all the prostitutes in the area to come. Now, some of you that may be new, I saw a couple of new names on the website, maybe going, oh, prostitutes. Yes, in the Vedic times there were prostitutes because there was some men that could not properly control themselves. And so instead of polluting chaste women, there was a class of women that were in that business. They don't call it the oldest profession for nothing. So at any rate, he called all the prostitutes together. And then amongst all the beautiful, young, attractive, physically enticing prostitutes, he picked the most beautiful. Her name was Lakshahira. And Lakshahira was, how shall we say, her body was just suitable for the pastimes of being a prostitute. And she was very expert as well. So he told her, he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the residence in the forest of this Haridasa. And I want you to entice him. And I'm going to send one of my guards with you to hide. And once you've enticed him into accepting your sexual favors, then I will arrest him as being a fraud. And I will prove that he is not what he says. So she said, all right, not a problem. So Lakshahira, she made herself in the most attractive way, dressed in the most seductive manner, and wore her sari in the most unchaste of ways, and came upon the scene. And when she arrived at Haridasa's hut, what did she see? Oh, there's the Tulsi plant. Now, Lakshahira was actually raised as a Hindu. But as we've spoken before, many of the Hindus were implicated by circumstances of the government at that time to be engaged in the service of the Muslims. So she was actually raised as a proper Hindu girl, although she'd gone astray down this path of prostitution. So when she came into the area of Haridasa Thakura's Bhajan Kutir, she saw Tulsi plant. So what did she do? She bowed down, offered her obeisances to the Tulsi plant. So then she got up and she went to the doorway of Haridasa's hut, and she stood in the doorway in a very seductive way. Now this is just one little side point that I'll throw in here, something I always like to mention when the opportunity presents itself. You sometimes see in a uninformed way, ladies will carry on conversations with someone, and either another woman or a man that they're having some proper discussion with, in the doorway of a room, to and from somewhere. And actually, this is not proper to have a woman stand in a doorway, as is exemplified, because in her efforts to entice Haridasa, she stood in the doorway. And she leaned against the doorway and put one hand on the door frame opposite and brought one knee up and very seductively exposed part of her leg. And this way, you know, she was an expert at these things. So she said, my Haridasa, you're such a handsome young man. Only 18 or 19 in the full vigor of your youth, your manhood. A woman such as I cannot help but desire to have union with you. I will not be satisfied until you give me the blessing of union. And if you do not give me, then I will kill myself. So in this way, she was enticing him. So Haridasa said, all right, I've just begun chanting my regular number of rounds. I have a certain vow of rounds that I've taken to chant this month, and I have to chant so many a day. So if you'll just sit down here, when I finish these rounds, then I will certainly satisfy your desire. So Haridasa continued to chant, and Lakshahira, she sat there and listened all throughout the night. She would doze a little bit because, after all, she wasn't a very advanced spiritualist. And she would doze, and then the morning came, and as we know from other indications, these types of activities take place in the dark, at the night. You don't see the prostitutes so much engaging in their trade during the daylight hours. At any rate, so the morning came, the sun rose, and Haridasa apologized. He said, I'm so sorry. I wasn't able to finish my rounds last night. So come again tonight and it will be all right. So then she came back again the second night. Haridasa, I'm here again. And Haridasa said, yes, just sit down. I'm just finishing my chanting, and then I will certainly satisfy your desire. So in this way again, she sat down, and while sitting there, he continued chanting very devotedly, very profoundly, with great enthusiasm, very audibly in this case, as we mentioned, because it's the end of the day, he's chanting loudly. And so she, and each day, keep in mind, each day when she came, what did she do? She offered obeisances to the Tulsi plant, and then went to approach Haridasa. So the third night she came, and she's sitting there, and Haridasa said, your arrival is just in time. I'm almost finished here. So just a little bit, sit down. And so he continued his chanting. And then finally, Lakshahira said, my dear Haridasa, I have a confession to make. Haridasa said, yes, what is the confession? I have been sent here by Ramchandra Khan to drag you down, to engage in illicit activity with you, so that his guard, who was waiting in the forest for my call, can come and then expose you as a cheater. I am the most sinful of persons for this activity. Will you please forgive me? And Haridasa Thakura said, I knew this. I knew this the first night you came. But I decided to instead purify you and give you the opportunity for devotional service and to give you the blessings of the holy name. So she bowed at Haridasa's feet and said, please give me instructions. What should I do? So Haridasa said, he said, you take all the riches and wealth, because the prostitute is very well paid. You know, this is the life they lead. So you take all the riches and wealth and you distribute it to the Brahmins. All the proceeds from your sinful life you give to the Brahmins. This meant she had to give everything away because that's all she had. Said, then you shave your head and you come back here. I will give you this hut. I am going away. I would have left already, but I stayed simply for your deliverance. And I am leaving this place. So in this way, the prostitute went back. She gave away all of her belongings. She shaved her head, put on white, and she came and sat in the hut of Haridasa Thakura and took up the practice of chanting 300,000 names of the Lord. She had become so purified of her sinful desires by dint of associating with the pure devotee as Haridasa, by the process of hearing the chanting 3 nights from Haridasa, and by the process of admitting to her sinful activities and giving them up, that she was able to chant in this way. Dressed in a single cloth, she lived in this hut, and the local residents soon came to bring her the offerings they brought to Haridasa, understanding her to be an advanced disciple. She worshipped the Tulsi every day. Actually, I should have brought it tonight, but anyway, I have some dust from this place where Haridasa Thakura converted a prostitute. I keep it in a little container at home. It's very nice. So in this way, she became celebrated as the most advanced Vaishnavi by the mercy of Haridasa Thakura. So this is an important principle, that the spiritual master is able to deliver even the most fallen of persons if they are sincere in their heart, if they are honest in their activities. So, Ramchandra Khan. What happened to Ramchandra Khan? So, it mentions that a Vaishnava never takes offense for any misdoing that's done against him. And this is true. He accepts whatever activities are performed as the results of his past activities. Whatever difficulties come upon me, this is what I deserve, and actually so much worse. So a Vaishnava never takes anything personal. However, the Lord does not have such a satisfied feeling about a person who commits an offense against a Vaishnava. So it mentions that in this way, Ramchandra Khan had sown the seeds of his own destruction, and it was about to be his undoing. So in this course of time, Nityananda, who, remember, Nityananda was appearing before Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda came and came to this village, and he was aware that Ramchandra Khan had this very bad reputation for Vaishnava, so he came to give Ramchandra Khan the chanting of the holy name. So when they stopped in the village, he said, into Ramchandra Khan's province, he said, we're just here as sadhus just passing through. We want to perform the Sankirtan, but we need a place to stay for the evening. Can you please give us some shelter? Ramchandra Khan said, none of you have any proper caste. You're not even fit to live in my milk shed. So, no, I have no place for you to stay. Very, very amazing. So, what it happens then is that Lord Nityananda gives him a curse. And Lord Nityananda curses him and says that this place is not even suitable to be inhabited by cow-killing meat-eaters. So, in this way, what happened was that eventually Ramchandra Khan, and remember, he's a magistrate, so he's collecting taxes on behalf of the bigger Shah. So the Shah's men came through, and they came to collect the taxes due. And what they did was, on the Durga Mandap that he had, they sacrificed a cow, which is not to be done. They sacrificed a cow there, and as a result of that, they then stole all the wealth of Ramchandra Khan, and his entire caste was ruined, his wealth was all taken, and his home was stolen from him, and he was banished. So in this way, due to his offense against Haridasa Thakura, everything was ultimately taken from him in this way. So Chaitanya Charitamrita points out that any town or country in which a great soul is insulted, even if by only one of its inhabitants, is destroyed on the account of that offense. So the entire district that Ramchandra Khan had jurisdiction over was completely lost due to his offense against Haridasa Thakura. Now, when Haridasa Thakura was living in Jaisur, he left there after some time and went to a place called the Hooghly district. There's still the district there in Calcutta today. And he stayed in the village of Chandapur. And there were two very amazing personalities living in Chandapur at the time. And one of those personalities was Hiranya, and the other was Govardhan. Now, Govardhan and Hiranya were brothers. And Govardhan and Hiranya had a son. Well, Govardhan had his son, and the son's name was Raghunathas. And you may remember that the family priest was Balaram Acharya. So Balaram Acharya used to hold these little satsangs, as we call them now. And he would arrange that the devotees would regularly have discussions on Bhagavat. And so one time he invited Haridasa Thakura. And so Haridasa Thakura came, and he was sitting there and listening, and the different discussions were going on. And in due course of time, the discussions circled around to the subject of the holy name. Now, the different Brahmins, the pundits there, one of them spoke up, and he said, the benefit of the holy name is that it will destroy the reactions to all of one's sinful activities. This is the conclusion. And another Brahmin said, no, you are incorrect. The benefit of the holy name is that it will give the result of all karmakanya activities. That all the sinful activities, that is one thing. But all of the results of one's karma will be eliminated. So in this way they were discussing different material aspects of the holy name. Finally, Haridasa Thakura said, excuse me. He said, factually speaking, the real benefit of the holy name is that one develops prema, love for the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. The secondary process is the removal of one's sinful reactions, and further sub-process to that is the removal of one's past karma. These are automatically taken into account by the development of prema. So in this way the debate started back and forth. Now, there was one very particular devotee there, and he was saying that this further benefit is that one will get liberation. Haridasa Thakura said that this liberation is also a minor issue in the understanding of a developing love for God. So the freedom of one's karma, the removal of sinful activities, the idea too that one will get liberation, these are all subcategories. They are not the main benefit. So upon hearing this, there was one Brahmin in the room, and his name was Gopal Chakravarti. And Gopal Chakravarti, he had some very strong things to say. He did not accept the fact of what Haridasa Thakura was saying. He said, you mean to tell me that simply by chanting the holy name one automatically gets liberation? That which is strived after by yogis for hundreds of years? That automatically the sinful reactions are gone and one develops prema that easily? This cannot possibly be true. I challenge you, Haridas, that if this is true, then I will cut off my own nose. No, I'm sorry. If it is not true, then I will cut off your nose. And if it is true, then I will cut off my own nose. Well, you can imagine amongst a civilized assembly of brahmanas, such an outrageous statement by Gopal Chakravarti. Now, Gopal Chakravarti was engaged by Hiranya and Govardhan as a family minister of sorts. He did some services for them. He was part of their Brahminical staff. And when he made these comments, everyone just went into a big uproar and a hubbub, and oh no, this is how you said such an unfortunate, oh, this is so horrible. So Hiranya and Govardhan immediately dismissed him from their employment. And they apologized to Haridasa Thakura. No, it's not such an important thing, it's not such an issue. Now, interesting thing, Gopal Chakravarti, he had a very beautiful nose. Now, generally, we don't tend to think of noses as so beautiful, but, sometimes it can be the redeeming characteristic of a person. He had a very beautiful nose, and he was very proud of this nose. So, because of the offense he committed against Haridasa Thakura, what happened? As we heard last week in the case of the other Gopal, his nose melted off from leprosy. He lost that beautiful nose. And he lost his employment in the home of Govardhan and Hiranya, and he was left in the most unfortunate of circumstances. So here again, by causing offense to a Vaishnava, by speaking ill against a Vaishnava, by raising inappropriate challenges against a Vaishnava, most heinous misfortune will fall upon a person. So. We got in the chat room tonight. See, we have Creole Kid, a new name, Creole Kid. Nice to have you with us. Brian is also new, and Harsh. Nice to have you all with us. I saw that our old friend Mauricio's there. Nice to have you with us, Mauricio. Okay, we've got a good crew there. And Holy Grass is there. Hare Krishna, Holy Grass. Nice to have you all in there. I see some of you have been asking some questions. As you have been informed now, our approach is that we run the program for about an hour, and we can break and do questions then. Of course, we have many, many topics on Haridasa Thakura. We may have to do 2 nights on Haridasa Thakura. All right, so in due course of time, Haridasa Thakura decided to go to Fulia. Fulia is a village near where Advaita Acharya was living in Shantipur. So, as we mentioned, Advaita Acharya was a bit older. He was understood to be 17 years older than Haridasa Thakura. Advaita Acharya was quite elderly. As I mentioned, he was considerably elderly. So, Haridasa Thakura was living there in one cave. Now, generally, we think of living in a cave, you know, but this cave, I've been to this place, is simply a hole in the ground. Just a spot down there. So, this was where Haridasa Thakura was living. And so, in this way, he would associate with Advaita Acharya. And when Advaita Acharya knew that he was there, Advaita Acharya understood that Haridasa Thakura is the most advanced of Brahmins. He may be appearing in a Muslim body, but because of his attachment for the holy name, because of his purity in his devotional service, he is the most advanced, he is the highest. So when Advaita Acharya would perform the Pritri Shraddha, the offering of grains to the forefathers, he would take the first prasad plate after the prasad, and he would give that to Haridas. And Haridas said, how can I accept this? I'm just a low-born Muslim. He said, no, you're the most elevated of Vaishnavas. So you should accept. And even the Brahmins criticized Advaita, but still he told them, he said, no, this Haridasa Thakura, he is the most advanced of Vaishnavas, therefore he is getting the place first. So in this way, Advaita Acharyas, we know, began to contemplate, you know, how the world would be saved without some type of devotion being present to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Advaita Acharya was, of course, very responsible for his bringing of the Lord by his calling, his causing the Lord to descend. Haridasa Thakura was with him in these times. It actually mentions that at the time of Mahaprabhu's birth, Haridasa Thakura and Advaita Acharya both roared in loud ecstasy. And no one could understand what they were doing, but they both knew in their heart that the Lord had finally appeared in this way. So, in this way, Haridasa Thakura continued living with Advaita Acharya. And while he was living with Advaita Acharya, the second of the 2 tests by women appeared to him. Now, this test was none other than Maya Devi herself. Maya Devi herself appeared before Haridasa. I have heard this Haridasa is so advanced, I want to actually test him. Now, of course, devotees, we are often tested by different enticements of material nature. And these are tests by Maya, because her job, unlike the prostitute, her job is to see what is the quality of this devotee. Is it genuine? Like that. So she wasn't testing to see, oh, I want to make him fall down. She was just testing him to see the level of his sincerity. So, again, she came before him, dressed, you know, very, very nicely and attractively, and called to him, you know, that she wanted to enjoy with him. And so Haridas told her, he said, you know, same thing, I've got my fixed number of rounds to chant, so you please just sit down and then I can satisfy your desires. Maya Devi did not have to do this 3 times. She understood right off that Haridasa Thakura is a very advanced devotee. He is not going to succumb to my enticements. And she immediately offered obeisance to him. And so Maya Devi was astonished to see that he did not get the slightest distraction from his chanting of the holy name for her presence. So in this way, she actually admitted her defeat and took initiation from Haridas and then disappeared from the scene. It's mentioned like that. There's a quote in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Maya says, previously I have received the name of Lord Ram from Shiva, but I had the desire to hear in the name of Krishna from you, Haridas. Ram's name gives liberation, but Krishna's name gives prema. You have made me most fortunate by giving me the name of Krishna, and now I feel love of God washing over me. So this was the indication of why she appeared. Unlike the prostitute who appeared with ulterior motives but was purified, Maya appeared specifically to get something of spiritual benefit from Haridasa Thakura. So Vrindavan Das Thakur mentions in his Chaitanya Bhagavat that prior to Haridasa's going to Pulia, where he met with Advaita, that he was living in an area just near Shantipur, but not exactly there, and that the Brahmins of that village, they came to understand the glories of Haridasa Thakur by his chanting, and began to give great appreciation to him. And they were actually honoring him in a great way because they could realize he's a very advanced devotee. Now, in that area, there was a Qazi. And we remember that the Qazis had different responsibilities at that time. And this Qazi began to know that not only is Haridas receiving praise, but this Haridas was born in a Muslim family, but he's taken up the Hindu tradition. Excuse me. So he said, how is it that this Muslim has taken this Hindu tradition and is beginning to follow it in this way? All right, he must be arrested. He is not following his own faith. So the Qazi arranged that he would be arrested and that he would be taken and put into jail. Now, of course, when the prisoners in jail came to know that Haridas was going to come, they thought, oh, great, a sadhu is coming into the jail. Please give us freedom. Please let us be released from here. This was their prayer. They were assuming that the purpose of a sadhu was to give me some freedom from my difficulties. I'll tell a little side story. Srila Prabhupada was traveling on the trains in India one time, and his servants would always try to protect Srila Prabhupada from any intrusion by people that were just going to waste Prabhupada's time. But as is the custom, if you can catch someone's eye, then the contact is made. So these two Indian gentlemen were walking by, and they several times walking by trying to catch Prabhupada's eye, and the two servants were trying to block and stand in the way, but they succeeded. Prabhupada caught their eye and nodded them in, and the servants said to let them come in. So they sat down. Prabhupada said, so, what may I do for you? They said, oh, we are looking for blessings, Swami. And then Prabhupada said something they were not accustomed to hearing. Prabhupada said, oh, what are those blessings? Oh, the sadhu? And they're thinking, well, sadhu must know what the blessings are. We'll just ask for them and he'll give them. But Prabhupada took him. He said, so what are those blessings? And then one man said, blessings for the family. And the two servants kind of made a sour face, like, no, that's not the right thing. And then the men caught this, and they said, and the other one said, well, and I have some difficulty with my knee. And the servants made an even bigger face, and they realized that, and blessings for humanity at large, for the people. And the servants were just shaking their head. And Srila Prabhupada at this point stepped in. He said, do you want my blessings? This is my blessings. And he pointed to his two servants who were nice in tilak and shaved head and dhoti and kurta. He said, this is the blessings I have to give. Do you want them? And then the story goes, the men very quickly excused themselves and got up and went out of the room. So the prisoners in the jail, Haridas is thrown into the jail. They're thinking, oh, all right, now we will get our blessings. We will be freed. So Haridas said, well, the blessing I give you is that you stay here in the jail. What? We are prisoned in the jail and we want to be released. And you are a sadhu and we ask for the blessings. And you say, oh, my blessing is that you get to stay in the jail. Why should we want to stay in the jail? What kind of blessing is this? And Haridas explained, because in the jail, you have no need to look out for your necessities. Everything is provided for you. You have the ideal situation to take up the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. No concerns with anything else, simply sitting and chanting all day. So in this way, it was very, very wonderful. They actually were able to get this association of Haridasa Thakura. So anyway, the prisoners, they were encouraged, don't be sad, just take up this chanting like that. And so they began to chant and dance, very, very nice like that. So at any rate, the Nawab came to hear that the Qazi has put this Haridas into the jail, and that this Haridas was at one time a Muslim. So he said to the Qazi, he said, you have not made any success in changing him, so bring him to me. So the Nawab had the audience with Haridas, and he said to him, he said, my dear sir, he said, you were born in a Muslim family, but why are you taking up this practice of calling on the Hindu god's name? So Haridasa Thakura, he said, you know, he said, one worships in this way and that way. There is only one God. It is the same God. You may be born in a Hindu family or a Muslim family. These are the externals. Regardless, one should take up the name of God that is satisfying to him. So that name of God, the holy name of God, is Krishna. And the living being has no independence in deciding how to take up this name. So the Nawab became a little, unhappy with that. So he said to him, he said, this thing that you're saying, this is not proper for the Muslim tradition. This is not how you were raised. So Haridasa Thakura, he says, if you just chant the names of God that are found in your own religion and stop practicing, the Nawab said to him, you should chant the names of God that are found in your own religion and give up the chanting of the names of God from another's religion. He said, if you don't do as I'm telling you, you will face a very severe punishment. The Qazi has arrested you for this, and now you've been brought before me. So it is best not to try and convince me of philosophy and this and that. So Haridasa Thakura listened. And Haridasa Thakura, it says in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, he gave this following verse. You may cut my body into pieces, and my life may even leave this body, but I will never abandon the holy name of Krishna, which my tongue will continue to always chant. So this type of dedication impressed the Nawab. The Nawab thought this is a very advanced soul. But in the same way, he had a responsibility to satisfy his juniors, the Qazi who had brought him for punishment, because he was the deciding factor. So he said, he said to the Qazi, he said, I cannot break his resolve. What do you suggest should be his punishment? He turned to the Qazi. And the Qazi said, if we do not punish this man, then other Muslims will think that they can also give up this chanting. Give up our religious lifestyle, and that they will take up the way of the Hindus as well. Therefore, he should be taken to 22 marketplaces and beaten. Now, it was a common practice for a thief to be beaten in 3 marketplaces. And usually by the 3rd marketplace, the person would be dead. If you were given the sentence of beating in the marketplace, you really knew it was over. Because there would be 2 massive guards with bamboo sticks, that would beat you in one marketplace and then drag you to another marketplace and beat you. By the time you got to the 3rd one, you were dead. So he ordered 22 marketplaces. And if this individual is so spiritually strong, then we will see if he lives after that. So the Nawab said, all right, this is the order, so let it be carried out. So in this way, it's described the most cruel of beatings took place for Haridasa. From marketplace to marketplace, they drug him. And they beat him and beat him. It mentions that the torturers saw that after 22 marketplaces, still Haridasa Thakura was alive. Now, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had wanted to appear and protect Haridas from these beatings. But Haridas prayed, my dear Lord, please do not punish them. His exact words for, be merciful to these poor souls, O my Lord. Though they treat me like an enemy, I do not consider what they are doing an offense. So the Lord was pleaded to by Haridasa Thakura on behalf of these Muslim torturers that you please don't punish them. So he didn't. So at the end of these 22 marketplaces, the beaters, the 2 soldiers, they saw that this man is still alive. So they began to say to him, you don't die. How is it that you're not dying? After 3 marketplaces, a regular man is dead. And you're doing 22 marketplaces and are not dead. How is that? Then they began to talk to each other. The Qazi will think we haven't severely beaten him. The Qazi will begin to think that, oh, that we didn't beat him enough. How will we deal with this? Then he will torture us. Then he will beat us. My dear Haridas, you must do something to save us from this. So they began to pray to Haridas. So Haridas could see that his very presence was causing difficulty. So he said, oh, you want me to die? Then I will die. And he went into a samadhi trance. Now, when he went into the samadhi trance, it mentions that his body was laying there, and they were thinking, okay, we'll throw the body into the water. So they tried to lift it, these 2 men, and they couldn't. And they called in some elephants, and they couldn't move him. He was not able to move him at all. And then they began to lament, oh, if we do not move Haridas's body, then we will be the most unfortunate. We will be punished even more. So immediately upon hearing that, the body of Haridas became as light as a feather. And so they decided, okay, we will take him back to the Nawab. And the Nawab could see that he had been punished and was now dead. So he said, all right, bury him at such and such a place. Because he said, no. Burying him is too good. Someone may dig him up and try to perform some worship of him. He should simply be thrown into the water and carried out into the sea by the waves of the Ganga. So they took his body and they threw it into the Ganga. And when Haridasa Thakura's body hit the Ganga, it floated. And it floated across the Ganga to Fulia. And when it got to the banks on the other side, he broke out of his samadhi. He got up on the banks, raised his arms into the sky and chanted, Hare Krishna, jumping and chanting and dancing. And the servants, the Muslims on the other side, they said, oh, he must be a great saint, a great saintly person. We have committed a horrible offense. So in this way they began to offer obeisances and pray that they would be forgiven in this way. So it mentions that when the Lord later showed his Mahaprakash pastimes at the house of Srivas, we spoke about this last week. Excuse me. Excuse me. That when the Lord showed his Mahaprakash pastimes, he invited each of the devotees in and gave them the blessing of seeing him in a particular form. So what happened was he said, where's Haridas? He called for Haridas, and they said, oh, Haridas is outside. We'll bring him in. So they went out to get Haridas. Haridas, the Lord is calling for you. The Lord is calling for you. He said, oh, I cannot go before the Lord. I am the most fallen of personalities. I cannot come before him. He said, no, the Lord is calling for you. No, I cannot go. So they went and they said, Lord, Haridas will not come. No, you bring him in. So they brought Haridas in. And Lord Chaitanya said, my dear Haridas, do you remember when you were beaten in the 22 marketplaces? And I came with my Surushan ready to kill those offenders. But you prayed for me not to. So I didn't. But I covered your body and protected you so that you were not affected by the beatings. Just look and see. And the Lord turned and showed his back, and there were cane marks on his back where he'd been beaten on behalf of Haridas. So he said to Haridas, he said, my dear Lord, my dear Haridas, you beg anything from me. You ask some boon, and I will give it to you. And Haridas said, my dear Lord, you are known as Bhakta Vatsal, the friend of the devotees. But I am not a devotee. How can I ask for a boon? You are known as Patita Pavana, deliverer of the most fallen. But how can I am more fallen than even that. How can I expect to be delivered by you? You are known as the savior of the humble devotee. But I am not humble. How can I ask a benediction of you? The Lord said, no, Haridas, you must ask something. He said, my dear Lord, if I must ask something, let me ask to always remain humble in my service to you. So we see the amazing transformation that Haridasa Thakura has taken from being Lord Brahma, stealing the cows and calves due to his pride and arrogance, to considering himself to be the most unfortunate, the lowest. So there's another story that when Haridas was living in this cave in Fulia, that there was a poisonous snake that lived in this cave. I've heard this story before many times. And so the people that would come to hear from Haridasa, the fumes from this poisonous snake, they were very, difficult, and so they were thinking, we won't come anymore. So Haridasa said, all right. He said, we'll have to try and make some arrangement for the snake to leave like that. So Haridasa said, tomorrow, if the snake has not left, then I will leave and find another place to live. So in this way, the super soul in the heart of the snake arranged for the snake to leave, and Haridasa was able to stay in his place like that. So this is just another example of Krishna protecting him. So one day, there was a snake charmer. We're speaking about snakes. And this snake charmer came to perform his instrumental playing near Haridasa Thakura, because in the snake charmer's mind, he was taming the snake of Kaliya. He was a devotee, the snake charmer. And so he came to enact the pastime of trying to tame the Kaliya serpent. And so Haridasa was there, and hearing this, Haridasa began to swoon in ecstasy about the pastime of Kaliya. And he rolled on the ground in an ecstatic mood of remembering this pastime. And the devotees would all come forward and take the dust from Haridasa's feet. Now there was one impostor standing nearby that saw that, they're respecting this Haridasa and touching his feet. If I swoon in ecstasy also, they will touch my feet. So while the snake charmer was playing his musical instrument in this pastime of taming the Kaliya serpent, this impostor came up and he began to fall and roll on the ground. But everyone understood he's simply a cheater and impostor, and they took sticks and beat him, and he screamed and yelled and got up and ran away. So as I mentioned that the chanting of Haridasa Thakura, we're already at 9 o'clock here. Let's see. Let's stop here for a second. Address a couple of the questions that I see popping around on the chat room here, and then we can finish up with a bit more about Haridasa. Let's go back up here. Who's got...
The very first question was, how did Haridasa Thakura know about the holy name before Lord Chaitanya?
Mauricio is asking, how did Haridasa Thakura know about the holy name? Well, keep in mind, the holy name did not just originate with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The holy name of Krishna is eternally present. And the holy name of Krishna was always taken up by saints throughout the years, by sadhus and devotees always engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. It's just that when Mahaprabhu came, the Renaissance age, if you will, of the chanting of the holy name began to take. And to set that stage, Mahaprabhu sent his associates ahead of time to be able to help bring that about. What's our next question there? This is our friend Harsh, and he wants to know why Krishna loves the peacock feather and Tulsi so much. Well, Tulsi is a pure devotee, and her entire life, if you look up on the internet, you can Google that and find the life story of Tulsi. As a matter of fact, Krishna.com has a very, very wonderful book and CD telling the story of Tulsi. And Tulsi is such a pure devotee who gave her life as a gopi in order to take this form as a plant that would always be used at Krishna's feet. This was her offering to Krishna, and Krishna was so pleased by that, he never accepts a single offering that does not have a Tulsi leaf on it. At least in meditation, one must put the Tulsi leaf there. So this is why Krishna likes Tulsi so much, because she completely gave of herself. And as far as the peacock feather is always decorating Krishna's head. It's just one of the forest ornaments that Krishna finds. The stories of Krishna and the cowherd boys are always described as Krishna having a peacock feather. Actually, many of the cowherd boys wore peacock feathers too. But Krishna always wears a peacock feather. What was the Prabhupada said when he was asked if this deity or that deity can wear a? Prabhupada said, anyone can wear the peacock feather. Krishna must wear the peacock feather. Beyond that, Harsh, I don't know an exact reason. So, where's our next question here? I've been reading ISKCON books nowadays, but I don't come upon the glories of Mirabai, a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Is there a reason? Yes, Harsh, the reason is that Mirabai is from a different sampradaya. Each of the teachings of the Lord come in a particular line. 4 main sampradayas which are authorized by the Lord himself. And these sampradayas have their individual saints and their individual teachers, and then these individuals pass on the story according to that line of teachings. And Mirabai is not a saintly person that comes from our particular teachings. This doesn't mean that we don't have respect for her or that we don't acknowledge her presence, but she is not part of the line that we follow. That's why you don't find her name mentioned in any of our books. What's the next question?
That was kind of it.
That was it? Okay, good. All right. My good friend Dhruva Maharaj Das is appreciating the Haridasa Thakura. We were hearing from him just the other day, and he's making note that so far we only see the disciples of Haridas are prostitutes and Maya Devi. Yes, better him than us. All right, so let's return back here. The King of the Peacocks, Haridam, is saying the peacock feather story because Krishna was pleased with the King of the Peacocks. You know, something like that does stick in my mind. I can't place a connection with it. And maybe my friend Dhruva Maharaj, if he's still there, knows something about the peacock and the peacock king or something, but I can't speak on that which I'm not familiar with. And Mauricio is asking, is there a connection with Sanatana Goswami and Mirabai? There's some story that's told about, I don't think it's Sanatana, I think it was Rupa, might have been Sanatana, but it's Rupa or Sanatana, about Mirabai asking to meet with them and them saying, no, we don't meet with women. And then Mirabai saying, oh, I thought in Vrindavan Krishna was the male and everyone else was female. I don't know the authenticity or not of that story. It is a common story you hear in Vrindavan, but I can't cite the exact reference of where it is. I do know that there was some correspondence I've read in other Vaishnava literatures between Mirabai and the saintly Goswamis and the Acharyas in Vrindavan at that time. Harsh is saying, do you believe that Mirabai would have reached Golok in the end of her due to the culmination of her bhakti? Harsh, here again, I really wouldn't be able to say what's what with Mirabai because I'm not that familiar with her life and her devotion. I know she was a great poet and singer of the glorification of Krishna, and Krishna does say that if one remembers me at the time of death, he doesn't say if you're in this sampradaya or that, he says if you remember me at the time of death, you go. So certainly if that's the established, then there. Holy Grass is asking, what are the 4 lineages that Krishna established? Okay. The Sri Sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya, the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, and which one am I forgetting about? It's 3.
Vishnu Swami.
Vishnu Swami is the Acharya for the Sri Sampradaya. The
Nimbarka Swami. What is that?
Huh?
Nimbarka Swami?
Nimbarka, yes, Nimbarka, the 4 Kumaras. So Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, Shri, thank you Haridam, Kumaras. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the Shri Sampradaya. The Nimbarka is the Kumara Sampradaya. Then there's the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, which culminates in the Gaudiya edition to that of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then there is the Rudra, the Rudra Sampradaya, which comes from Lord Shiva. So those are the 4 Sampradayas. There we go. Haridam has got them all. Shri, Rudra, Kumara, and Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. There we go. All right. Which one was Arjuna in? Mauricio asks. Well, I would say the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, since he was he was a disciple. Krishna is saying on the battlefield that I spoke this to Sun God and the you got me there, holy Mauricio. I'm going to have to look on that and find out. I can't give you an answer right off the top of my head. Check with me next week. I'll make a note and look that up for you. All right. So, shall we finish with some more Haridas? Or shall we... let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. We've only got a few more pages here. All right. It's a little bit after 9. We'll run a long one tonight. Why not? Okay. So where were we now? So Haridas comes to Navadvip. So after these different activities and different exchanges, we find that Haridasa Thakur decided to come and reside in Navadvip. He's staying near there with Advaitacharya. And at this point, he meets Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As I mentioned in the beginning, Mahaprabhu was about 10, 15 years old, something like that. Haridasa Thakur is about 50 years his elder. Now, Mahaprabhu immediately arranges for Nityananda and Haridas to go out on Sankirtan, on Harinam. And he sends them out every day as part of this Harinam Sankirtan. And these are his two generals in the Kirtan party. Now, Nityananda, as we know, of course, is always intoxicated with the love of Godhead. And what we find is that Haridasa Thakur and Nityananda go out and they encounter these two individuals, Jagai and Madai. And we all know the story very well. Jagai and Madai are two drunken Brahmins by birth, but not by activity. And they're really engaged in sinful nonsense activity. And they're always causing trouble to the Brahmins, to the Vaishnavas. And so Haridas and Nityananda come to them, encouraging them to chant. And they began to curse at them and run after them with sticks, trying to chase them, because they see the chanting as a disturbance. So Nityananda, of course, is some 20 years younger than Haridas, and he takes off. Haridas is 50-something years old, 58 or so, and he's trying to run away from these, so he barely gets away. So when he gets back, he complains to Advaitacharya. He says, I'm not going out with this Nityananda anymore. There's Nityananda, who's drunk on love of Godhead, and Jagai and Madhai, who are drunk on wine. I'm the only sane man in the group. And they're all just engaged in this craziness. And so Haridas, he's an older man. He doesn't want to go out into these crazy situations. So Advaita and Haridas have a laugh about this. And so, of course, we know eventually the two brothers, Jagai and Madhai, the very long story of how they're delivered, and in this way they're freed. But we see that Haridasa Thakur was an integral part of the Sankirtan activities of the Lord at that time. Haridasa Thakur also engaged in the water sport activities of the Lord when he would take bath in the Ganga with all the devotees. It mentions that they would get into the water and splash and play and joke with each other like this. Actually, one day the Lord went into an ecstatic trance while he was in the Ganga, and Nityananda and Haridas had to drag him out from the water before he would drown in that way. So there was one time, very, very interesting time, where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu orchestrated a play amongst all the devotees. And it was a play about Vrindavan. And Haridas took the part of the town constable. And he came onto the scene dressed up as a policeman. This is described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And he was carrying a stick in his hand. And other actors in the play was Mahaprabhu was taking the part of Adya Shakti. And Nityananda took the part of an old cowherd woman. Advaita took the part as the town clown. And Gadadhar Pandit took the part as a cowherd girl. And Srinivas took the part as Narada Muni, who he actually was anyway. Excuse me. So Haridas's duty in the play was to go around and wake everyone up in the morning for their daily service to Krishna. So he would go around with this stick and tapping it on all the devotees, yelling, "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" Jeev Jago is probably what he said in Bengali. So in this way, he would wake all the devotees up, and then Srivas, dressed as Narada Muni, would begin this ecstatic dancing and get all the devotees engaged in a chanting of the holy names like this. So this was one play that Mahaprabhu arranged, and Haridas had the part of the policeman in it. It mentions that the night that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to take sannyas, Haridasa Thakur could understand that the Lord was going to take sannyas. And he was very, very disturbed by this news and by this idea that the Lord would be giving this up, but he knew this was the pastimes of the Lord. It mentions that once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and moved to Puri, that Haridasa Thakur left Navadvip and went to Puri and stayed there in Puri continually till the end of his life with this personality of Godhead. And when he was in Puri, he would never go into the Jagannath temple. It's not that he was banned from going in, but he would, out of humility, because he considered himself to be a low-class Muslim, and he figured if I go anywhere near the gates or near the temple, then the pujaris might accidentally touch me, and I'm so contaminated, and they'll be ruined in this way like that. So he would not go in. He stayed in a small hut just a short distance from the Jagannath temple. Rupa Goswami also lived a distance like that. He didn't live very close to the Jagannath Mandir either. So in this way, they, were very active in the pastimes of the Lord there. It mentions that Haridasa Thakura was one of the dancers in the 7 kirtan parties for the Rath Yatra every year. As we've talked previously, there were 7 different kirtan parties with different kirtan leaders. I think Haridas was in Mukunda's kirtan party. Yes, Mukunda's kirtan party. He was in the kirtan party that Mukunda would lead, and Haridas was one of the dancers like that. So there's not much left to talk about except the passing of Haridas, which is very, very amazing story. Because it mentions that as Haridasa Thakura was getting quite elderly, he, let's say if he was 50 years old when he met Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu was, say, 15. So Mahaprabhu lived to 48. So 48, 15, that's 33. So he was in his later years. He was in maybe his 80s, we can assume. So at this time, he was understanding the Lord's going to wrap up his pastimes, but he did not want to see that. This is commonly the mood of a devotee, is they do not want to witness the pastimes of the Lord's departure from this world. So Haridasa Thakura had no desire for that. And it mentions that as he was getting elderly, his activities also, as with old age, the activities began to diminish. So Mahaprabhu came to see him one day, and he could tell he wasn't feeling so well and wasn't right. He said, Haridas, he said, what is the matter with you? You have some disease? And Haridasa Thakura, he mentioned, he said, the only disease I have is that I have not been able to finish my rounds. And Mahaprabhu said, Haridas, you are so old now. You have completed all the necessities of your chanting. You can reduce the amount that you chant. It is not required for you to chant these 300, 196 rounds, whatever it was he was doing each day. You can reduce that. And Haridas did not want to reduce that. He did not want to give it up in any way. So, in this way, the Lord could detect. So, Sanatana Goswami was saying to Haridas, he mentioned actually Haridas and Sanatana were kind of exchanging a little glorification of each other, appreciation of each other. So Haridas began to recite the glories of Sanatana Goswami. And then it mentions that Sanatana returned that appreciation and spoke the following words about Haridasa Thakura. He said to him, he said, who else is there who is your equal, Haridas? You are the most fortunate amongst Mahaprabhu's entourage. The purpose of the Lord's incarnation is the preaching of the holy name. This personal work of the Lord has been done through you. Every single day you chant 3 lakhs of holy names and you glorify the holy name to everyone you meet. Some people act properly but do not deliver the message of Krishna consciousness. Others preach but do not have the proper behavior standards. You, my dear Haridas, both demonstrate ideal behavior and preaching. You are the guru of all and the perfected human being in this universe. So this is quoted from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, in this way, everyone appreciated the Lord. Everyone appreciated Haridasa Thakura. And when the Lord began to inquire from Haridas, coming a couple of days like this, and the Lord seeing that he wasn't there, he asked Haridas, what is it you desire? And Haridas told him, he said, my dear Lord, I know that you are about to end your pastimes on this world, and I do not want to see this. I desire that you let me leave this body before you leave this world. So in this way, a large kirtan party was started. And it mentions that Haridasa Thakura sat down in front of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and looked into the loving eyes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and chanted Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And in this way, looking upon the face of Mahaprabhu and chanting the names of Mahaprabhu, he departed from this world. Such a wonderful way that a devotee would leave this world. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then personally lifted the body of Haridasa Thakura in his own arms and carried him to the ocean and bathed his body, as is the tradition. Once the body is finished, then the body is bathed and then properly dressed. And then they dug the hole for the samadhi of Haridasa Thakura and placed his body lovingly into that samadhi. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu threw the first handful of sand in. And then he filled up this pit and established the samadhi. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to all the shopkeepers in Jagannath Puri and begged Bhoga for a feast in the honor of Haridasa Thakura. And it mentions that Sanatana Goswami went with him and wouldn't let him carry it. He arranged for extra help and for carriers and carts to carry all this. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat all the devotees of Puri down and fed all of them the feast in honor of Haridasa Thakura. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the end of this feast, when everyone was eaten to their full satisfaction, offered the following proclamation. He said, all those who have witnessed this disappearance festival of Haridasa Thakura, those who have danced, or those who sang the holy names there, those who came and threw a handful of sand on his samadhi, or those who took Mahaprasad on this occasion, they will quickly attain love for Krishna. This is the fruit of seeing such a great personality as Haridasa Thakura. The Supreme Lord was so merciful to me that he gave me the association of Haridasa Thakura. And now that independent Lord has desired to deprive me of that association with Haridas. When Haridas decided he did not want to live, there was nothing more I could do to keep him here. He left his body at the very moment he desired to do so, just as we have heard that Grandfather Bhishma did. Haridas was the exemplary of humanity for this entire world, and now that he is gone, this world has lost a most valuable jewel. All glories to Haridasa Thakura. Chant the Lord's holy name. And then after finishing these words, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to engage in an ecstatic Harinam Sankirtan with all the devotees there in Puri. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So with that, we will finish. And we thank you for joining us again for another night in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. My name is Chatur Atma. Join us again next Monday. Hare Krishna.